Thunderbirds fans, and welcome to the second installment of our Thunderbird Thursday virtual series. I'm pleased to be joined right now by the new head coach of the Springfield Thunderbirds. He is entering his third season as the AHL head coach in the St. Louis Blues organization, Drew Bannister. And Drew, first of all, welcome to Springfield, albeit virtually, and we look forward to the season whenever that may be.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I'm excited to get down to Springfield and of course, still right now we don't have an idea when we're going to be playing, but I know for myself and the rest of our staff, we're excited to get started hopefully sooner than later and get down to Springfield, kind of get ourselves in the rink and get ourselves organized and get back to playing hockey again.
Now, Drew, I know there are some people in our market, some of our longtime fans, who may be familiar with your name from your days playing as a defenseman for the Hartford Wolfpack. So through that experience, you kind of have a feel for the New England area and this division and the divisional market in the American Hockey League. What excites you most about entering this new division and a really different challenge, being more of a bus team again and being able to spend more nights in your own bed? What are going to be the benefits of that?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, but I think, first and foremost, I think you touched on it. One is spending more time on the bus, less time in airports. It was really difficult, as a first year, second year coach in the American Hockey League, coming from junior hockey where we spent time on a lot of our time on the bus. I feel like we eliminated a lot of our days off. We lost a lot of skill development. So number one for me is the time that we're going to be spending at home and giving our players, ample rest. And then two is the ability to develop their skills and have more time. I think sometimes as a coach, when you don't have that time, you tend to deviate more to structure. And I think it's important for the development of our players that we really hammer home the skill development part. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts about coming to Springfield, is having that extra time on the ice and practice with our players. And then for me personally, living in Connecticut for 2 years, I still have people there that I know. Obviously, the time that I was there, it was great. We were able to win a Calder Cup there in 2000. I met my wife, who I'm now married to, when I was there, when she was in Boston at the time going to school. So a lot of good memories from that area. Obviously less time traveling, although it is on the bus, but the teams are very close within our division. I'm sure if we get started here playing, we'll probably have a lot of division games, the way they're looking at it right now. So exciting for us. But again, I think the skill development part for me is the big part that I'm really excited about, is having that extra time with our players.
As if there wasn't enough of a challenge of adjusting to a new affiliation, moving from one part of the country to another, and now everything with the pandemic and the way the world has been has just made everyone have to adjust their lives and their schedules. So I'm curious, on a personal level, I'm curious as a hockey coach, a head coach of an American Hockey League team, how have you used it? How have you bided your time during the midst of all of this? And what can you do that you might not have had the time to do in the midst of a crazy normal regular season?
Well, I think that could be a long question for me, Ryan. So I know we have a lot of time here, and I think it's important to kind of talk a little bit about myself and my family and what I have been doing. But since the pandemic hit in March, I know in April, as an organization, myself and Kevin and the rest of our staff really got to work on our free agents, watching video. Obviously, we didn't have an idea at that time when free agency would be, that it would be stretched out this far, but we had a real good jump on that. Coming home, obviously we had our exit interviews that were obviously now done by Zoom, a lot of them. A lot of coaches meetings on Zoom, going over our systems, what we liked, what we didn't like, delegating our jobs as coaches to what we're going to do. Had a little break there. It's really started to talk a lot to, some of our players that are be coming in, that a lot of our fans are going to see, that are young, that are going to be new to me. So, for instance, Nikita Alexandrov and Hugh McGing and Tyler Tucker, Matthias Leferrier, Joel Hoffer, Sean Cameron. just to get a better idea, so they see our face, so there's no insecurities for them. So I think we've got a real good jump with those young players. And obviously family time. For me, it was my wife and my kids live in Thunder Bay. My wife's a high school teacher here. She's been back to work the last few years. We have 3 young daughters, age 10, 8, and 5, that are all in school and all playing hockey. So I've, over the last month here, been able to enjoy some sports and soccer and hockey that in regular times I wouldn't get to see them do. So that's been real special for me. Extended time at the camp. We have a camp that's on the Manitoulin Island. Usually we would, in post-pandemic, we'd probably get down there July. This year we were down mid-June. So we spent 6 good weeks there. With the kids, had an outstanding time. So there's been a lot of positives. Obviously, the hockey part is the biggest negative. Obviously, we all miss that. As a coaching staff, I find, we find it, you're constantly trying to find some things to do, but hockey's it's not a difficult sport. Sometimes you just got to simplify things, and I think we've tried to do that for our staff. We had some projects that I wanted our coaches to do once the NHL playoffs started, and kind of started looking at tendencies of teams, if there was anything new, and scouting that. Circling back with our coaches if we wanted to implement anything. The other big thing that we did was start to scout the teams in the East that we don't know a lot about. Wilkes-Barre was one team that we played last year, but previous to that, we haven't really played any Eastern teams. So that was one of the projects that myself and the rest of our staff did, was to start to go over games and break those down, so we had a better idea of how teams played and the players on their team, and how the coaches ran their bench.
Certainly no shortage of things that can get done over the course of this lengthy absence from the rink. But shifting back into when we do see the team on the ice again, obviously I'm not going to ask you to give away any top secrets in terms of systems and things you do in terms of your coaching style. But we have a question from one of our fans, Eric Krupchak, and he asks, how would you describe the style of hockey your team plays? And I'll elaborate on that a little bit. And if we have seen the Springfield Thunderbirds play an absolutely flawless game, what would you call the hallmark of a Drew Bannister coach team?
Yeah, I think that's changed, over the past couple of years. And obviously, my team in the Sioux was a different hockey team. We were highly skilled. We played with a lot of pace. Offensively, we were very talented. We played with the puck a lot. And I think St. Louis is similar, but we play, I think within the organization, we want to play a similar way of hockey, where it's a heavy forechecking game. We're a team that wants to play in the small areas to create space for each other. Certainly in today's game, there isn't a lot of space, so you got to be willing to win battles in the small areas, whether it's long balls or below the goal line to create offense. And then, without the puck obviously being above and being tight. And, Chief has done a great job, obviously, in St. Louis implementing, a system and structure there. For us, I think the word predictability comes to mind when I talk about our team. We want to play, be a predictable team in the way we play, so we can play a lot faster, I find. And that comes with, the structure in our game. Sometimes it's easy to scout, but I like to think of us as a team as that we're hard to play against, regardless if we're easy to scout or not. So, talk about execution, dictating the play, the pace that we want to play at. When we have a good game, I feel that we walk away and we feel like we've kind of dictated the pace and we've executed our game plan that we went out to play.
Of the returning players that will be on this roster, players that you can project to be on your roster from the end of the tenure in San Antonio to the first time your team sets foot on the ice in Springfield, who is a player, maybe someone not who you would imagine as like a top 6 forward or a top pairing defenseman, who is somebody who will have an impact that we might not know as much about right now?
Yeah, I don't want to overstep my boundaries. It's tough. It's tough to decipher what's going to happen in St. Louis and when the NHL is going to start and the American Hockey League is going to start, and who could be there. I mean, looking at St. Louis's roster from the end of the playoffs, they're going to have a couple of key forwards out in Vladimir Tarasenko and Alex Steen possibly. So there's a possibility of some players that maybe we would expect to be in our lineup won't be or won't start depending on when we start and the NHL starts. But there's a couple players that stand out to me that I'm really excited to see come back this year, that probably in most instances would be back with us pending how the NHL goes. But the two names that stick out up forward are Dakota Joshua and Alex Torpachenko, two first-year players for us last year that made some real big strides towards the end of the season. Big bodies that skate well, that have real good skill level, that play a heavy game, that play a St. Louis Blues type of game. So we're excited. I'm really excited. Very coachable kids, great kids to have in the dressing room. Guys love them. So those are two names that stick out to me. The other one obviously is, a player like Scott Perunovich, who was the Hobey Baker winner. And Scott is probably going to be a guy that could start in the NHL, could be there all year, or we could see him a bit too. So, but if we have the opportunity to have him down there, he's a smaller player, and really only my views on Scott were in development camp over the last 2 years, but he's an exciting player. He's an exciting player to have in our organization. Obviously highly skilled, can run a power play, will be able to run a power play at the American Hockey League level and probably at the NHL level very soon too. So, if we get a player like that down, obviously it's going to help our back end and the offense we create from that.
Kind of bouncing off of that, we did have one question from another one of our season ticket holders, Gene Albano, asking how much you encourage scoring an offense from your defense. Obviously, that's something in your playing career that you did plenty of at the American Hockey League level. What's your stance on how a defense contributes to your offense?
Well, I think as a group, we want to be connected in all three zones. I don't expect my defense to score, but I expect them to be involved in the offense, and that starts from exiting our zone. And we work a lot on our exits. It's an important part of the game for me to be able to exit the zone cleanly out of your end as quickly as possible. So you spend time, more on the offense and less defending. And that starts with your D being active and being available on breakouts, and then it goes from there, through your transition in the neutral zone to how you enter, the width and the depth of the ice in the offensive zone. And then your cycle plan too. And certainly we want our D to be involved. And I think we have, or you will see, we have some pretty good young hockey players on our back end that are more mature, going into the third year pros, guys like a Mitch Reinke, a Jake Wallman, who again, both those guys are probably going to be pushing for position in the NHL. But, very good skaters, think the game very well, highly offensive guys. And then, you look at a guy that's a new player for us, and Tyler Tucker, and what he's done in Major Junior, an offensive guy. I don't know if he's going to bring the same offense I coached against Tyler, but a highly competitive guy, skates well, physical, and he's a guy that's going to back his teammates up. And I think he's a guy that's going to earn some ice time as he gets more comfortable at our level.
I'm sure a lot of our fans love hearing a description of a guy who's willing to back his team up. And you played in Springfield during the course of your career, so you know just how intense the division play up in the New England area can get. But I want to take another step back from the defense and into the blue paint, where you saw a little bit of goaltending in John Gillies in your first season as a head coach when you went head-to-head against him when he was with the Stockton Heat. Is obviously it's easy to read the height and weight figures and see he is an imposing figure in the net. What's most intriguing about his game to you as he joins the organization?
So I have a little bit of background with John in the sense that in my second year in the Sioux, I hired a guy by the name of Colin Zulinello out of Thunder Bay here to become our goalie coach. At the end of that year, he actually went to Calgary. So he worked with John for 3 years. So when we knew that John was going to be available in free agency, he was the first person that I reached out to. In that sense, to talk about John and see what he thought about him. Certainly, I saw him play 2 years ago in the 2 games that we played. Big body, moves well, covers a lot of the net, very athletic. So when you talk about goaltenders, especially at the NHL level, that's what you kind of see nowadays is big, cover the net, and athletic, and skate well, very mobile. And very competitive. And talking to Colin, he really had a high belief that he's an NHL goalie and that he's not far off it. And we see, in my first year with a goalie like Jordan Binnington at 25, 26, finally breaking through the NHL and what he's done. And John's still young at 26. I know 2 years ago, after my first year, Kevin and I talked a lot about getting younger with the players that we bring in. And I think last year we did that with a lot of our free agent signings, and we're continuing to do that because we had success last year with that. And I think John's one of those players that's going to come in. He's going to push for, ice time. He's going to push those guys up top, which we want. But I think on the same sense, we have a young goalie in Joel Hofer coming in. He was an outstanding goalie, had a lot of success in junior hockey. Was the starting goalie for Canada at the World Juniors where they won gold medal last year. So we're really excited to have him in there. And I think John's going to be, a great veteran player to help Joel mature. But I think Joel, in the same sense, is going to really push him for ice time and to become a better goalie for us in Springfield.
While we're on the topic of players that you have seen before as opponents in your time in the American Hockey League, another player who, when we spoke to Kevin McDonald 2 weeks ago on this program, he could not speak much more glowingly of Steve Santini. And what do you picture Santini's role being as sort of that shutdown defense first mindset, which is kind of a throwback when you think about it to the way the defense position has evolved?
Yeah, so I know Steve has played a little bit on the East with New Jersey, and then I think in Binghamton at the time, probably. So maybe you guys would have seen him a little bit more than we have. But and to quite honestly, he wasn't on our radar. He still had a year left in his contract when he was bought out by Nashville, and he jumped on our radar real quickly. Right shot defenseman that skates very well, defends very well, moves pucks very well. So when you talk about, I know Kevin and I talked a lot about righty lefty D, and I'm very pro for that. He was one of the number one guys that we wanted to go out and get. And when I talk about, a player like Jake Wallman, I think he's a big compliment to a player if he can play with him and they can have success. I think, our team's going to have success. I know Kevin's had a lot of conversations with Steve and, just raves about the maturity and the type of person he is. And again, I think Steve, is one of those players that we've signed that can push for a spot in St. Louis, but again, he's still young, still has development, still, is looking to make that jump to the NHL. And I think that's what we love about all these guys that we sign. They're there's a strong belief that, they're ready to make that jump to the NHL. And if not, we know that we have good hockey players that are kind of going to come down and compete to get themselves back up to the NHL.
We're talking with Thunderbirds head coach Drew Bannister here on Thunderbird Thursdays, presented by Mass Mutual. Shifting to the forward unit, and this was the area that when we talked to Kevin, it was the one area of the game that the Blues, particularly at the AHL level, wanted to address, getting more scoring up front. And pretty hard to argue with the results, signing Sam Annis and Curtis McKenzie in the matter of the same week. I think it was a day apart, maybe even the same day. Two players who Sam's impact last season, leading the AHL in scoring with 70 points. You saw plenty of him, and the folks in New England saw plenty of him in his college days at Quinnipiac. Just how excited for you, not just for Sam, but for Curtis as well, to have those two as potentially offensive leaders at the American League level, barring, of course, any changes in St. Louis.
So I'll start with Curtis first, and just talk a little bit about the Midwestern division that we played in. Real difficult division to play in. Big, heavy teams: Milwaukee, Chicago, Iowa, Manitoba, Grand Rapids. Heavy teams. Like there's no easy games. Every night, you have to go to battle against these teams. They're big and they're heavy. And when I think about Chicago, there's a few players come to mind, but Curtis McKenzie is one player that jumped out to us. If he was going to become a free agent, that we wanted to go after to help our left side behind a player like Nathan Walker, to give us size, but also give us the ability to create offense. Again, going back, to our identity as a team, being a tough team to play against off the forecheck, strong along the walls, strong below the goal line, and getting to the net front. And, scouting Curtis and seeing him play, he's a player that's willing to go to the hard areas, that scores a lot of his goals around the hard areas. Does a lot of things good for a big player, skates very well, can be used on the power play, is a great penalty killer. So he's a big addition to our team. But number one, Jimmy Johnson, within our organization, his son played with him, so he knew him as a person, raved about him. So we're really excited to have that personality in our dressing room this year. And then with Sam, he's had 3 or 4 real good years in the American Hockey League. He's still a young hockey player, a smaller player, but competitive, and on pucks, skates well. To me, probably what I've seen on our side, the best passer in the game at the American League level. Had a really good shooter on his line, but he was able to get that guy the puck all the time. So very dangerous on the half wall, the power play, probably the most dangerous player I've seen at our level, being able to make plays off the half wall. So it gives us the ability, obviously on the power play, to have him there. But it also helps the creativity of our team offensively. It's going to drive our team a little bit more, having a player like him in our lineup.
Just a couple more forwards I want to get a chance to have you talk about a little bit. 3 returners from the club a season ago. And the first one you kind of alluded to in that last answer with Curtis McKenzie is Nathan Walker. And there's a lot of people, fans in the Springfield market, who are familiar with Nathan from his days in Hershey with the Bears. Just a spark plug kind of player, a fast player, and really someone who, on a personal level, talking with other broadcasters, I've heard nothing but glowing things about Nathan Walker, the player, and Nathan Walker, the person. What will fans come to love about him?
Yeah, so a year ago when, we were going over free agent, and I scouted Nathan. He was my number one guy at the top of the list. Like, for me, I just loved the way he played and the energy he brought and the way he competed. Not knowing the player at all, not seeing him play live. Kevin obviously had seen him a lot play. So he was a guy that we really targeted. Again, a younger player, still has a lot to prove, believes in himself, believes in his ability. And then again, like you said, he's just an outstanding kid. And he was a pleasure to be around. But he's just he's a player that drives your team. He's a driver. Like, you can put him anywhere and he can do a lot, whether it's on the power play, killing penalties, playing against other teams' top lines. He plays at a high pace. He plays big for his size. He's just a fun player to watch. I'm sure the fans in Springfield are going to enjoy him playing this year. But he's certainly, one of our go-to guys when we talk about Offensively, he was very good for us last year. But another player that I think is going to benefit from guys like Curtis McKenzie, playing around him, and Sam Annis, being able to get him the puck.
Another one you referred, or rather Kevin, when we spoke to him 2 weeks ago, referred to as kind of a Swiss Army knife, kind of somebody like Nathan Walker you can trust in multiple situations, is Nolan Stevens. And I don't need to elaborate on why. A lot of folks in our market are familiar with his name. Of course, his father, John, played a number of seasons with the Indians and Falcons. Nolan, a forward unlike his father, but again, Kevin referred to him as a Swiss Army knife. What makes Nolan versatile and effective? And we saw a big bump in his point production in his second season versus his first. What do you think the ceiling for him can be as he gets into his third pro season and beyond?
Yeah, so Nolan, Nolan struggled in his first year with us, probably for a ladder of good 6 to 8 weeks. He came from a very good college hockey team where he had extremely high-end college hockey players to play with. He played on the wing. We had him on the wing, and he struggled with the pace a little bit at the wing. I believe we were on the West Coast swing on the road where it came a point where we had to do something within our lineup, make some changes. Nolan hadn't been out of our lineup yet, I don't think, at that point. But we were close to sit him in the stands for performance, not really for the person he is or his work ethic, just performance. We wanted to see more out of Nolan. So we just said, you know what, let's move him to center and see how he does. It might be a little bit of a wake-up call for him, get him out of his comfort zone. I think at that time, his father, John, had just been fired in LA, and both of his parents were at the game. And whatever happened, the light turned for him. He was outstanding in that game. And to Nolan's credit, he kind of ran with it. It wasn't a comfortable position for him to play, but he found a way to get in our lineup and stay in our lineup. Now, if you talk to Nolan, he's probably more comfortable out playing at the wing. And we tried to get him there last year. We had an influx of some younger wingers that we wanted to get ice time, like the Dakota Joshuas and the Alex Torpachenkos. So again, Nolan found himself trying to find a spot in our lineup, and we had some injuries. We had a couple bumps in the road. Nolan went to center. Nolan became an important part of our penalty kill. He played up in the lineup, in the top 6 on the wing. You could move him to center, and he started to have a lot of success offensively. Now, a lot of that had to do with the work that he put in the summer on his skating, I believe. It's still not where it needs to be able to play at the NHL level, but he certainly took a step last year in that, and I know he continues to work on it. He's a hard worker, skilled, knows how to use his body to create space for himself. And I think his confidence is starting to grow in himself. And again, I challenged him a couple of weeks ago that, maybe there might not be a spot for you at the left side where you're real comfortable at, but you have an opportunity to play in the top 6 at center with some pretty good players. Start to wrap your head around that and let's get ready to play. And he's all for it. Like he's a great teammate. He's a great kid. He's a hard worker. He just wants, to have success at the American League level, get an opportunity at the NHL level, like all kids do. But he's just, he's well-liked in our dressing room. He's well-liked by our coaching staff. We're excited to have him back because he brings a lot to our team. Like he can play up and down in your lineup, like Kevin said. He can kill penalties. You can put him on the power play. He can play in your bottom 6. He can play on the left side. He can play in center. I'm sure if I wanted to throw him in net, he could probably do that too. But overall, just, he is a good player, and I'm excited to see the steps that he'll make, like guys like Austin Pagansky, like Mitch Renke, that are kind of coming into the third year. And you expect a little bit more from those guys comparable to the first and second year players.
Drew, we'll wrap it up with one guy who I honestly 2 weeks ago with Kevin probably didn't give his just due in terms of time that we spent discussing him, And that's a young man in Klim Kostin who has played 181 AHL games. And when you say that, the average fan probably thinks, okay, he's probably 23, 24, 25. There's a kid who just turned 21 years old after the pause had occurred. What are the next steps you see for Klim, and what has made him impressive to this point, playing 3 full seasons basically in the AHL before reaching his 21st birthday?
Yeah, I think unfairly for us is that, we look at Klim as a 3 or 4 year veteran of the American Hockey League, and we tend to forget. And I'm constantly saying, this over the last 2 years is this is a young kid that we're dealing with still. Like he's young. Like most of his peers right now are playing junior hockey, and we're expecting this kid to light up the league against men that are 26, 30 years old. Like it's not going to happen. Like we have to be patient with this kid. And he had some struggles, and a lot of it, stems from the same problems that all kids have, expectations for themselves, expectations from whether it's parents or organizations, and immaturity, and we saw that with Klim early on. Now, last year, we saw a lot of strides, which I was really excited about. Like Klim became a more mature hockey player. He became more coachable. He started to understand the game a little bit better. There's always been a little bit of a language barrier with Klim, so you got to be on him and be sure. When he goes back to Russia, that's something that when he comes back, it's, we have to, get him speaking English again as much as possible. When I talk about a guy like Alex Torpachenko, he speaks English fluently. He played, I guess, 3 or 4 years, I'm not sure, in Guelph in the Ontario Hockey League. So, speaks English very well. So there's no issue with the learning curve there. But where with Klim, there is a little issue with the language barrier. And that's something that Klim's got to work on to help himself and also help us as a coaching staff be able to teach him. But when you talk about the player, there's a lot to like about Klim because he's big, he's physical, and he skates well, and he can shoot a puck. But in the same sense, it's always been consistency with Klim. Like he'll be lights out in one game, and then you'll be biting your tongue, trying to find him a spot in our lineup because he's not the same player he was the night before. So that's consistency. And we saw the consistency in his game get a lot better last year. And with that, he got rewarded. And, he had an opportunity to play in the NHL. And I know that this year, since the pandemic hit us, I believe it's his sister that lives in LA. So he was there pretty much the whole time, which I think is really good for Klim. And I spoke to Klim and FaceTimed with him, and English wise, I think that helped too. But to stay over here, maintain, a residence in North America, continue to train. When the NHL camp started to open up, he was ready to go. From everything we heard, he was great for them there. They were really excited about how he came in shape and how he looked on the ice. I think he was probably pretty close to getting, maybe a game in the playoffs there. Klim's another player that's probably, this coming year is going to push for a spot in St. Louis. Like he's that good. And if we have him, he's another guy that, although he's a 4-year veteran, I still think he's just a 2nd-year veteran coming in. So you expect him to be better, but also the expectations we have to, because he's only 21 years old, we don't want to run away with the expectations for him because he's been in the league for 4 years. I still look at him as just a 2nd-year pro. And he still has a lot of learning and development to do, and still maturing to do too, to help that consistency in his game.
Thunderbirds head coach Drew Bannister taking the time to join me on this Thunderbird Thursday presented by Mass Mutual. Drew, welcome to Springfield once again, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us.
Well, thanks for having me, Ryan. I'm very appreciative of you guys having me on. I think this is great. And hopefully we get back to playing hockey really soon so the fans in Springfield can get back to the rinks and see us again perform on the ice for them. And hopefully we have a great season of hockey ahead of us.
Couldn't agree more. Until next time, this has been Thunderbird Thursday presented by Mass Mutual.